Adapting to life in space, it's been a process. Got here initially, I was crashing everywhere. I was losing everything because everything floats away from you if you don't put it in your pocket or use Velcro to tie down or maybe an elastic bungee.
Good afternoon, all the students on Earth. I'm Judge.
Absolutely correct. The standard cup will not work in a weightless environment. You know, the cup that we're all used to drinking.
Wait, I have a cup right here.
Oh, a standard cup like this does not work in a weightless environment. It requires gravity to hold the food in the bottom of the cup.
1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat. 15 minutes ago, you knew that people were alone on this planet. Imagine what you know tomorrow.
I saw, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and the height thereof was great. The tree grew and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to the end of all the earth. The leaves thereof were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it was meat for all. The beasts of the field had shadow under it, and the fowls of the heaven dwelt in the boughs thereof, and all flesh was fed of it. I saw in the visions of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher, and an holy one came down from heaven. He cried aloud and said thus, Hew down the tree and cut off his branches, shake off his leaves, and scatter his fruit. Let the beasts get away from under it, and the fowls from his branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump of his roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass in the tender grass of the field. And let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts in the grass of the earth. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown.
The Creator formed us on the second day, the day He made the heavens. We watched over Adam and Eve, saw their frailty and their love. And then we saw their fall, and we pitied them. We were not stone then, but light. It was not our place to interfere. Yet we chose to try and help mankind. And when we disobeyed the Creator, He punished us. We were encrusted by your world. Rock and mud shackled our fiery glow. Those who lived were left prisoners in these stony shells, marooned upon this barren land. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown.
Chapter 7. And all the others together with them took unto themselves wives, each chose for himself one. And they began to go in unto them and defile themselves with them. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind.
There is a forbidden book, lost for centuries, that includes fallen angels, bloodthirsty giants, and a warning to all humanity. It is an ancient writing filled with divine secrets and visions. A tour of heaven and hell, guided by the angel Uriel. The Book of Enoch is named for the man who the Holy Bible says walked with God.
Enoch walked with God after the birth of Methuselah 300 years, and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God, then he was no more, because God took him.
It is a daunting manuscript, 5 volumes containing 108 chapters. For many ancient Christians, the Book of Enoch was essential, yet it was banned from the Christian Bible.
We don't know why this literature was ultimately excluded from the canon. Perhaps it's because of its description of the fall of the rebel angels and their mating with mortals. Perhaps.
The Book of Enoch begins with a warning to all humanity that a divine judgment has been rendered and a sentence will be imposed. God tells Enoch that all life on earth will be destroyed in a violent flood. And, as with the story in Genesis, God blames this evil on the sons of God, angels who lusted after the daughters of men.
These angels are sometimes referred to as watchers. They keep constant watch. And they decide one day, about 200 of them, that they're going to descend to the earth. They would like to very much make contact with these mortal women.
The Book of Enoch may have been an attempt to expand on the mysterious giants, the sons of God, and the daughters of the earth, spoken of in Genesis.
Anytime you read the book of Genesis, there are all kinds of unanswered questions. Suddenly, there is this quick few verses at the beginning of the flood story about giants in the land that come from the sons of God mixing with the daughters of the earth. And you stop and think, wait a minute, what's this all about? It's like it went by too fast. And you want to grab it and say, wait a minute, what was this?
The Book of Enoch offers a disturbing vision of the fall of the angels who lust after earthly women.
These angels have crossed over this boundary that they shouldn't have. They were spiritual beings and they were to remain as such. When they decided to descend upon earth, this unleashed upon the earth all sorts of problems. Not only these giants who are bloodthirsty and violent, but also these angels went on to teach humankind a variety of forbidden crap.
Yet the Book of Enoch was denied a home in the official Christian canon. Until the mid-20th century, the Book of Enoch was assumed to be of interest only to the very early Christians. Large portions of the Book of Enoch also were found among the Essene literature, hidden in the caves of Qumran, as part of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
There were giants in the earth in those days.
Since the late 1800s, there have been countless newspaper articles reporting discoveries of giant human remains being found all over the world. 18 strange skeletons found in Wisconsin, giant skull in San Antonio, Texas, giant bones found in New York, as well as similar discoveries in Austin, Texas, Los Angeles, Boston, and the list goes on.
So, as you can see, in the book of Enoch, God sent the watchers here, which eventually became the fallen angels. He sent them here to labor at the trees, to cut down the trees because he was going to flood the earth. So once the holy angels, the watchers, arrived here on earth and they cut down the trees because God was going to flood the earth, well, they also started lusting after the earthly women and they started mating with them. And the offspring of them mating with the earthly women caused what you call giants, the Nephilim. And people have been digging them up ever since we started building roads and excavating in the 1800s. And just like the book of Revelation says, God will keep the giants here as prisoners until the end of time, until he brings them back to end the world.
Are you ready, my brother? On your test!
Here comes the thunder.
Like a trumpet. In Michigan, another trumpet-like sound.
The United States military just fought the Nephilim hidden in a cavern in Afghanistan several years ago. You'd better wake up. All you lost souls have no clue of what's coming. What you think is make-believe is real. What you think is real is fake.
There were giants in the earth in those days.
The last and only Nephilim ever captured on film from the early 1930s in Japan.
In the visions of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher and an holy one came down from heaven. He cried aloud and said thus, Hew down the tree and cut off his branches, shake off his leaves and scatter his fruit. Let the beasts get away from under it, and the fowls from his branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump of his roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass in the tender grass of the field. And let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts in the grass of the earth.
Okay, here we have the scripture from the Dead Sea Scroll version. Okay. Now, in the Dead Sea text entitled The Book of Giants, the Nephilim, sons of the fallen angel Shemyaza, named Aya and Oya, experience dream visions in which they visit a world garden and see 200 trees being felled by heavenly angels. Felled means cut down. Not understanding the purpose of this allegory, they put the subject to the Nephilim Council, who appoint one of their number, Mohawi, to go on their behalf to consult Enoch, who now resides in an earthly paradise. To this end, Mohawi then rose up into the air like the whirlwinds and flew with the help of his hands like winged eagle over the cultivated lands and crossed Solitude, the giant desert, and he caught sight of Enoch and he called to him. Enoch explains that the 200 trees represent the 200 watchers. Okay, now, so you understand that, let's go back to the book of Enoch, okay? And right here it says, "And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children." So anyways, they all get together on this mountain, and as you can see here, then swear they all together and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And they were in all 200 who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. Okay, now let's go back over to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay, as you can see here, Enoch explains that the 200 trees represent the 200 watchers. Remember, the 200 watchers were originally angels. They were 200 fallen angels. Okay, they were to watch over the earthly beings, but they decided to come down and mate with the earthly women, which is what caused the Nephilim. Okay, so while the felling of their trunks signified their destruction in a coming conflagration and deluge, that means the flood was coming. That's why these angels were sent down to cut down the trees. Okay, and just like I showed you in Enoch 66:2, you know, God sent the angels to work at the trees. So anyway. Now keep in mind that there were 200 trees for the 200 angels, but I've only found a few of those trees. Okay, now, as you can see here, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, and from the book of Enoch, and from Daniel, from the Holy Bible, the giants did not cut down the trees. God sent angels here to cut down the trees because he was getting ready to flood the earth. And the only thing that would have been big enough to climb those trees to the heavens would have been the giants. So God knew what he was doing when he sent the angels here to cut them down before he even flooded the earth. There's your answer. The angels cut down the trees, just like Scripture says. Okay, everyone, in my last video, I showed you a meteorite crater in Arizona that is supposedly 55,000 years old, and I showed you how the crater is still there, but the big meteorite that landed there is just totally gone. And I also went on to let you know that if you Google or whatever you want to do to look for asteroids, they're all computer generated images by an artist. So anyways, What kept eating at me was a scripture from Genesis 7:11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. Now pay attention closely. It says all the fountains of the great deep broken up. Great deep means the deep ocean. Broken up means to come upward. So anyways, as I went on the search, I realized that there were more supposedly meteorite craters all over the world in different continents, all around, roughly around the same size as you can see here in these pictures. I took a picture from each continent from every one of these supposedly meteorite craters. But out of all these craters, there's nothing left of the meteor that landed there. And I say that in quote, supposedly landed there. There's nothing left of the meteorite, but all the craters are still there. So I went to investigate a little more. And I'd remembered researching geysers many, many years ago. Now, here's a few images of what geysers look like. But the images I'm showing you are what the geysers look like when they're actually erupting. So check this out. Now, does these craters underneath these geysers not look familiar to you? Just take a really, really close look. Now, I'm showing you the ones that are erupting. Now, let's take a look at the ones that are not erupting. Okay, now let's compare the so-called meteorite craters with the geyser craters. Get ready, you guys are totally going to be blown away. Now check this out. As you can see here, there's a runoff on the meteor crater and a runoff on the geyser. Now look at here, right in the middle, you see where the geyser actually comes up. You can see it in the meteor crater and the geyser. That's where the water comes up at. Same thing here. Everything around it is just where the water pressure coming up explodes everything outward. And here, if you look to the right of the crater and the right of the geyser, they're shaped identical. That's water pressure, not a meteorite. And no, it's not fallen angels. No, it's not ancient trees pulled up. It's simply the original geysers that God opened up and flooded the earth with. People, common sense. All you got to do is look at it. Now, you notice here in this meteor crater how the earth has upturned edge around the circle of the crater. Now, here's how that happens. Here is a photo of a geyser actually fixing to erupt. Notice how it upturns the edge of the hole around it. Now, once again, if we look in Genesis 7:11, towards the end of the scripture, it says, all of the fountains of the great deep broken up. The scripture tells us exactly what these are and exactly what God did to flood the earth. And it also says, and the windows of heaven were opened. So we also know that there's a firmament and it has windows in it. And he also flooded it from above as he did below. Now, this is where your inner wisdom should kick in. Science tells you that these are so-called meteor craters, okay? But there's no meteors in none of them. All over the world. There's no meteors found nowhere near or around or in the crater itself. But yet these craters are identical to geyser craters. That's because these so-called meteor craters are the giant craters that opened up from the deep, the great deep, and flooded the earth. The Bible is real. It is very accurate. And the flood of Noah happened, and I just showed you how it happened. And the funny thing about it is, they even showed you in the 2014 movie, Noah. Check it out.
Protect your mother. Protect them all.
Nobody does it like OTT TV.
First page and show you people where you're really at.
You're watching OTT TV Scripture Reality.
All right, kid, here's the deal. Humans, for the most part, don't have a clue. They don't want one or need one either. They're happy. They think they have a good bead on things.
Well, why the big secret? People are smart. They can handle it.
A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat, and 15 minutes ago, you knew that people were alone on this planet. Imagine what you'll know tomorrow.
the only limit to human future is in our own imaginations.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know.
Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen, so...
Another layer to sort of simulate the atmosphere.
And then there's this little bright spot.
It's called the specular highlight. So it's the reflection of sunlight off of water.
Those are the pieces, but you can't just slap them all together.
It just didn't look realistic. It looks kind of flat, or the clouds are sort of too see-through. So I just hit Command-Z a lot.
There's artistry to creating the world.
What I imagine it to be. Unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space. But I've looked at these images over and over again, trying to sort of get the essence of it. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Thank you for the time. I will go to many more exciting experiments to build it.
Station, this is Houston ACR. Ready to close the event.
Now, one thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth. There's no place to go. The Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth. We cannot leave the Earth.
the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat. 15 minutes ago, you knew that people were alone on this planet. Imagine what? No. Come on.
That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. Follow me.